Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January 24th, 2023 meeting of the Ulster County Transportation Council. This is a capital committee meeting. We'll start off with a roll call. Just for who's in the room. Dennis Doyle. Mike Baden, Town of Rochester. Herb Liz. Ed Fine, Ulster County DPW. John Morrow, Town of Ulster.
Andrew Jackson, New York State Department of Transportation.
Brian Slack, Ulster County Transportation Council.
David Stoss, UCTC.
Newly appointed member of staff in Thursday,
There you go.
a friend of voice, Police Highway, President Gordon.
And Dave, you want to read out who's on the phone?
Yeah, on the line we have Laura Petit, Shelley Johnston, Amy McKenzie, Chris Hannett, Phil Erner, and oops, sorry, just bounced around here. Did I miss anybody else on the line there? I think I got everyone then.
Okay. So with that, I'll have a call for citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments for those in the room? Barbara?
I decided that instead of just bringing a problem to the council, that I would try to be a part of the solution. So I was asked to join that committee, that Authorities Area Transportation Committee. They have received, they sent a letter of support for a request for the traffic study on Kings Highway to Region 8 DOT, and they have gotten a reply back that has been received and that it's being considered. So that's my update.
Thanks, Barbara. Anyone else in the room? On the phone?
We do have one comment coming in from Phil Erner. I'll ask him to unmute.
Thank you very much, and good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. I just wanted to mention it's a little hard for us to hear on the Zoom when some folks, presumably those far from the mic, are speaking. If they're able to speak up or the mic could be passed, I would appreciate it. I also have a repeat a request I had made last year for the council to consider realigning its timing so that folks arriving on public transit, which does pass by the venue, can arrive on time. That said, I am look forward to a productive year with you all. Although our legislative committees have not been announced yet, to my knowledge, I plan to be active in transportation, whether or not I'm on it, just as last year. I've already put in a local law in equitable transportation for discussion this coming month. And I feel like we can make progress with our state and federal elected officials, seeing as both the state senators, Oberacker and Hinchey, have gotten onto the transportation committees in the state Senate, as well as Assembly Member Shrestha. I haven't checked all the Assembly members, but she is on transportation in the Assembly, and both of our representatives in Congress, Molinaro and Ryan. Molinaro is already in transportation. I understand Congressman Ryan is attempting to get on that. So I think we'll have a lot of a greater voice in the state capitol and in Washington on these matters this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Legislator Erner. Anybody else?
One more comment coming in from Laura Petit. I'll ask her to unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Perfect.
I gotta figure out how to put my hand back down. Thank you. I didn't get a chance to look at the agenda, so I'm hoping there will be an update on the town of Ulster feasibility study as far as that traffic study in the business district. A group of us, including Legislator Erner, had gone out and walked that. And I was very surprised at there's no crosswalks. I believe there's one up by Walmart, and then the other one is all the way down by Popeyes. So realistically, if somebody wanted to cross that highway, if they wanted to take a chance of going across 4 lanes, there's no legal place for them to do it. And as you're aware, there was a pedestrian versus car where they were talking about actually issuing a ticket to the pedestrian because he crossed where there was no crosswalk. Also the sidewalks. So I'm hoping, you know, as we go more in depth and if there's a potential way to have more input on that we could, you know, we could consider multiple crosswalks and additional sidewalks. And I'm sorry, my picture's not up there. For some reason, my video does, I don't know if you can see it, but it does this. Oh no, now it's clear. But sometimes it looks like I'm on too much coffee and it hops all over. But anyway, thank you for giving me, there it goes. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else?
I don't see any more hands.
Okay. So approval of the October 25th, 2022 Technical Committee Meeting Summary. Can I have a motion for discussion purposes? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Do I have a second?
Second,
James, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are carried. Communications and announcements, Brian?
I do have quite a few actually, but if you wouldn't mind, you can wait until the next agenda item under other old business. There's 6 or 7 different items I can cover at that time.
Anything you want to cover under this?
No, unless there's anyone else who has any communications or announcements.
Any communications and announcements from in the room? Any communications and announcements from anybody on the phone?
None.
Okay, hearing none. New business, Brian? You want to do your communications announcements under old business?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So we're on new business. Item A, UCTC Resolution 2023, approval of the UCTC State Fiscal Year 2023 Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP. I have a motion for discussion purposes. So moved by Mr. Baden. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Morrow, I have a motion and a second. Brian? You have a presentation, I say.
Yeah, we do have a presentation. Dave, would it maybe
I'll switch spots.
must switch spots while I go through? Yeah, that would be great. So thank you, everyone. I have a few slides to go over. We do have some hard copies of the document here. And the draft is also available through the packet online. So good morning. Today we're presenting on the draft Unified Planning Work Program, which runs under state fiscal year 2023 to 2024. So that's the period April 1 through March 30th. Let's see there. Sorry. There we go. Great. So for those of you who aren't aware, the purpose of a Unified Planning Work Program is to plan and implement the Transportation Planning Work Program that supports the goals and objectives of the Long Range Transportation Plan. It is the nuts and bolts of the Transportation Council, and it essentially identifies and details all of the work that our staff and consultant assistants will be working on throughout the course of the next state fiscal year. I'm going to be going over some of the components of the UPWP in just a moment, but first I always like to start with the allocation history. In order to do the planning work the Transportation Council does, we're provided 2 separate grants on an annual basis. One is provided by the Federal Highway Administration and the other by the Federal Transit Administration. The Federal Highway allocation for 2023 is $509,767, and that reflects a steady increase year over year in that area. And on the FTA side, our grants are significantly smaller. This year, however, there is, again, an increase that reflects, I think, the new priorities in the bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as inflation. So we have $73,604. We are able, in most years, we do not spend all the money that we receive in a certain grant annual allocation, and we're able to save those grants year after year. This table shows our entire allocation history going back to 2020, 2003, when the Transportation Council was created. And it shows each year the dollars spent and saved year after year. So at the bottom, you'll note in federal dollars in FHWAPL funds, the Transportation Council has just over $1.3 million in funds available for future programming. And I'll also note that, of course, the UPWP runs under the state fiscal year, April to March. So we haven't closed state fiscal year 22 yet. That will close at the end of March. So we're forced to create an estimate of expenditures during the fourth quarter of the state fiscal year. So all figures that are presented today are essentially based on estimates. We're pretty good at getting our estimates to within, roughly $10,000, but we will have to do a final update of the Unified Planning Work Program once the fourth quarter is closed, and that's the same every year. And this is our FTA grant status year after year. Highlighted in yellow and red, again, that is an estimate. I'm expecting to close out our state fiscal year 2019 FTA grant during the fourth quarter. We may have some funds left over there, but otherwise we have roughly $265,000 in FTA funds that we have saved.
And we programmed most of that, right?
Yeah, and that's shown in the slides ahead. So the Unified Planning Work Program categories are dictated to us by our partners at New York State DOT and Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administrations. All the UPWPs by the MPOs statewide follow the same general outline. It's set up 6 sections: program support and administration, general development and comprehensive planning, long-range transportation planning, short-range transportation planning, TIP activities. And then there's this other category, and it's under the other category that our Federal Transit Administration activities are listed as well. So every year when we begin to plan for the new program period, we release a call for project proposals to give our members an opportunity to propose different types of transportation planning activities. And again, the focus of the UPWP are planning activities only. Capital program occurs during the Transportation Improvement Program update. So during this call for project period, we received 2 proposals. One was from the city of Kingston for a proposed corridor management plan for Albany and Ulster Avenue from the site of the new roundabout in the city of Kingston out to the intersection of Route 9W in the town of Ulster. The other project proposal came from a citizen and traffic safety board member, Lou Klepner, to consider a non-motorized connectivity study. During this update period, and I'll show the new projects that we will be including. We will be including the city of Kingston proposal in this update, but the non-motorized connectivity study is not being considered for inclusion at this time, and I can provide more information as needed. So let me go through project status of existing projects, ongoing projects, major initiatives, and talk about some of the big changes to the projects in the document this year. By the end of this state fiscal year, so March 31st, we should have completed the Transportation Infrastructure Resiliency and Vulnerability Assessment. There is a project ArcHub website that can be accessed through this URL. We actually will be having our final Technical Advisory Committee meeting this afternoon to go over the final results of the vulnerability assessment. This project did a full inventory of all transportation assets in Ulster County and ultimately focusing on bridges and roadways and assessing their vulnerability to existing and future hazardous conditions, specifically flooding and excessive heat exposure. And the results in a series of detailed maps are provided to the ArcHub page. This page is not publicized on our webpage yet because it is draft, but we are very close to having all the elements ready for public review. And I certainly wouldn't mind if anybody visited the URL at this point in time. Project status as of the end of the year. We have several projects that are underway that are sort of getting out of the gate. The Kingston Railroad Safety Study, that's a project that David is handling. And we're in the process of, the contract has been finalized and we're assembling a technical advisory committee and hope to have a kickoff meeting for that project in the next several weeks. We did receive an inquiry during the public comment period on the Ulster Route 9W Corridor Management Plan. That project is very much underway. I think we have made progress. Roughly about 25 to 30% of the project has been completed. We were just delivered the inventory of existing conditions several weeks ago by the consultant. That inventory is undergoing internal review and review by the Technical Advisory Committee. It gives a full inventory of all the transportation elements within the corridor, facilities, as well as traffic conditions, including crash history. As soon as our Technical Advisory Committee has an opportunity to review and comment on that draft, we'll make it available to the public. And to Legislator Petit's comment regarding the crosswalks, you are correct. There are limited opportunities for safe crossing of the roadway. The existing crosswalk is actually not by Walmart. It's actually by the Hannaford. And it's what we would often describe as a sidewalk or a crosswalk to nowhere. Once the individual crosses the street, there really aren't any facilities to pick up. So these are the types of inventories and comments that we're assessing and making during the 9W Corridor Management Plan. And we'll have detailed recommendations for how to improve that highway roadway for all users. We are also in the process of trying to identify a consultant to assist us with reconstructing our website. We have a relatively small amount of funds set aside, I believe it's $30,000, to revamp the UCTC website, put it into a new format, and reorganize a lot of the materials that are up there, getting to a point now where even staff are having a difficult time managing documents on the website. So we hope to have a consultant on board within the next several weeks for that project. Looking ahead into this calendar year, we have several priorities that we know we need to address. The most important is the Coordinated Human Services Public Transit Transportation Plan. This is a requirement of MPOs in order to be a recipient of certain types of FTA funds, 5310 funds. We have to have a Coordinated Human Services Plan updated every 5 years. And our plan is nearing the end of its life. Therefore, we need to do an update of the plan. I don't think it needs an overhaul, significant update. I'm pretty satisfied with the contents of the plan, but the important part of this process is outreach to human service transportation providers. These are not-for-profits, human service agencies like ARC, and a wide variety of other types of human service transportation providers, as well as our public provider, UCAT. We also have a project that will focus on complete streets planning within selected communities. This is rather than work on regional non-motorized activities that were proposed to us, we think the emphasis now for most communities really belongs in focusing on complete street solutions within the activity centers, main streets and other hamlet areas, to look at connecting and completing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, looking at intersections and safety within those dense areas where we have a lot of bike and pedestrian activity, and working on providing really actionable recommendations that would facilitate applications for transportation alternatives program or other types of available grants to do those complete streets improvements. So that will be I think a priority in this calendar year to get that study underway, and that will have consultant assistance. So there are some notable program changes. And there's a full summary at the very end of the excuse me, at the end of the document. But I'm going to go through what some of those are right now. There are a number of projects that have been removed after several years of inactivity. The first one is the Transportation Asset Planning and Coordination. This was envisioned as an opportunity to assist Department of Public Works with bridge inventory work, culvert inventory work, sign inventory, roadway condition inventory work. And for a variety of reasons, most of that type of work has already been addressed by our Department of Public Works. Or in the instance of surface road condition, New York State DOT has now been able to release their inventory of roadway conditions. So we have a lot of this information already. So at this point in time, we're going to remove the project due to inactivity. The next project, the Trail Intersection Safety Study. This was envisioned several years ago as a way to take a look at where our regional rail trails cross public roads to give a full assessment of the conditions and the facilities to notify drivers and the trail users how to cross safely. Again, in this instance, our Department of Public Works has been very proactive in addressing the majority of these intersections throughout the county through its routine repaving process. All those, or the majority of those intersections, have been addressed with new paint, new signage, and warning signage for both motorists and trail users. So we can still do inventory work if there are concerns raised, but we can address those through other program areas. We don't need a standalone task for this effort. EV planning was also set aside as we envision this as a possibility to assist municipalities with the siting and planning for EV charging infrastructure. And Patterns for Progress has actually taken on this study effort, and will be releasing a study shortly on those considerations. So at this point in time,
So the Department of Environment.
right,
Yeah.
that's right, thank you, and the Department of Environment. So at this time, we've decided to remove that project as well. A new project, as I mentioned, we have decided to include the City of Kingston proposal for an Ulster Albany Ave corridor management plan. I do not know when we'll begin this plan, but we anticipate the need requiring roughly $100,000. So we've set aside those funds, and we look forward to getting that project underway. That study area has been discussed for quite some time by, I think, elected officials and city and town officials, as well as many members of the public. So
Certainly from within inside the council
right,
staff as
right.
well.
So we're very pleased to get that project underway, or to at least include it in the program. The Regional Trail Wayfinding Project, that project was also removed due to inactivity. There didn't seem to be much need for trail wayfinding. And the one outspoken sponsor who was looking for assistance on the O&W rail trail, OSI, Open Space Institute, is doing work on that rail trail and will very likely be able to provide any sort of wayfinding assistance in that regard. And then finally, the Complete Streets Planning, we did increase the funding on that proposal to $70,000 available. And again, that's a project we hope to get initiated this year. Then final program changes, the LRTP has been funding has been set aside and increased to $75,000. The LRTP needs to be fully updated every 5 years. So the next update is due in 2024 by September 30th, 2024. Local road safety planning funding has been increased to $85,000. That is an opportunity to update our local road safety plan to put it in compliance with new bipartisan infrastructure law requirements.
And the reason for that?
Dave?
State Streets for All program is looking for certain components. And then we as part of a local road safety plan in order to be eligible for implementation funding. And there's also, additional safety work that we're looking to do at specific locations
Right,
throughout the county.
right. So the local road safety plan was completed in 2021. Bipartisan infrastructure law came out several months after with new requirements that went in addition to what we were aware of at that time. So that'll be a minor update, I think. And then traffic and pedestrian safety education. We had set aside $5,000 to assist the city of Kingston with their Road Hero campaign last year. We used that funding for the fabrication of bus wraps on UCAP buses. This year, we're proposing to increase funding to $25,000 to continue assistance with traffic and pedestrian safety education. Our thought is that we will engage with the Traffic Safety Board to identify what types of campaign materials or messages need to be focused on during this calendar year. So those are the major changes. Otherwise, most of the projects remain roughly the same as they were in previous years listed in the UPWP. Just to give you some familiarity with the document, if you go to the draft budget overview in Appendix A, Table 1, this shows the full listing of how we plan to utilize our funds. So if you start on row 8 near the top, $509,767 is our annual grant that we received this year. We will program savings of $581,000 for a total program budget of just over $1 million in FHWA funds for FHWA related planning projects. That means that we will have an unprogrammed balance of $276 remaining as savings for future programming, which is typically the minimum we do like to keep in our savings as unprogrammed in case of any sort of federal rescission or future needs. On the FTA side, we're programming 100% of available funds toward the planning projects listed in the UPWP. So our grant of $73,000 plus savings of $191,995. We have $265,599 fully programmed. And then if you want even more detail, if you go to Table 5 of the UPWP, how the distribution of our dollars are distributed through contracts and staffing, whether it's obligated contracts or new contracts, and by program area, it is shown in detail in Table 5. I also want to make folks.
Why don't we stop? Does anybody have any questions? Anybody on the remote?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay.
So I want to make folks aware on our project website, there is a section called Annual Reports. And we do publish a annual report, that's not it, that is available here. We handed it out, and it's if you go through annual reports, you'll find the 2021 FHWA annual report. You know, it's notable that we program a significant amount of money on an annual basis, but we do not always spend 100% of those funds. We are required to prepare our annual report that shows the drawdown in great detail by task of how we're performing on each task. Sometimes we overdraw on a task, what we program for it, that's okay, as long as we don't overspend our full program budget. It's fine if we go over by one task. So I would encourage folks to familiarize yourself with that annual report. Again, it goes into great detail, all the activities that the UCTC does on an annual basis. And that 2021 report was just approved by New York State DOT and submitted to FHWA about 2 weeks ago. So again, the full summary of the 2023 Unified Planning Work Program is now included in the appendix as well. I understand this is difficult to see and read at this resolution, but please be aware that this is basically where all of the hard work is done on the budget in the Excel spreadsheet. Yellow rows indicate consultant assistance. Blue rows indicate that will be addressed by UCTC staff. So the process for the UPWP approval, the technical committee will review it and hopefully provide approval of the UPWP today. It is now open for comment and will go open for 15-day public comment period next week. After the 15-day public comment period, it will then be submitted to the UCTC Policy Committee for final approval at our meeting on February 28th. So at this point, I'm open to any questions folks may have regarding the content of the Unified Planning Work Program, specific tasks listed either in the current year or in our next year's program. Whatever you may have in mind.
Brian, the call for public comment, is that this document or is that the larger?
That's the larger Unified Planning Work Program. I hope I didn't confuse the two, because the annual report I thought is very useful in the context of the Unified Planning Work Program, because it follows the same format. And again, it provides a detailed assessment of progress made on each of the projects, including a fiscal assessment as well.
And you said that's available on the website?
Yes,
Okay, I'm gonna share it with all the supervisors.
please do. Thank you.
Just so the council's aware, as of last Tuesday, I'm now the president of the Supervisors Association.
Congratulations.
One more.
Condolences.
So I'll share it with all the supervisors for you.
Any questions? Any questions on the remote?
Don't see any hands raised.
Hearing none. We have a resolution, motion and a second on the floor. Hearing no additional questions or discussion. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried.
Thank you.
All right. So we're on to item 6,
That's right.
other old business. Ryan?
Yes, I think I'll start with one bullet point that's not listed there, and that's project updates. I discussed 9W. I guess we covered all the project updates in the UPWP presentation, unless anybody had questions regarding ongoing projects. Yeah, I guess they were all covered. The 9W corridor management plan, the railroad safety study will begin shortly. And the website, we hope to have someone under contract soon. TIP administrative modifications, New York State DOT local projects unit and other staff did submit us a batch of administrative modifications to the TIP. These are mainly schedule changes. The 2023 TIP has become active, and we're given a 10-day grace period to make any final changes regarding schedules to the TIP. So we did submit a number of changes regarding schedules to New York State DOT. So thanks for your assistance for that, Nicole's in particular. No major changes really.
We're just, yeah, they're all administrative.
Right.
So just so the council understands, administrative procedures don't require a vote of the council. They fall within the TIP guidelines that between the council staff and NISDOT, we can make those administrative changes.
Bridge New York, Dave?
Bridge New York, application deadline closed out on the 20th. I believe, I know that Ulster County DPW applied. I'm not too sure if we received any other applications. And well, touch base with New York State DOT, because I think most of the applications were going to their email. But we did forward along the one that we got from Ulster County DPW, and so we'll begin reviewing those shortly and hopefully get some awards out.
Do you know if there were any culvert applications?
There was interest in culvert applications. I know the town of Ulster specifically was interested in some culvert applications, so we'll see what comes in there.
I think Olive also was looking at some.
Hey, Dave?
Yeah, hi, Amy.
Hi, I have an update on that.
Oh, that's great. Let me move you onto the big screen here.
We received 4 bridge applications from Ulster County and 11 culverts.
That's great.
Oh,
It is great.
Can you give us a sense of where the bridge applications came from, Amy?
It was the town of Platicville, town of Shandaken, town of Warwarsing, and Ulster County.
Great.
And region-wide, we have received more applications than funding available. So, you know, the scoring team's work that they're gonna be doing over the next month is really important. And, you know, as soon as the scoring team finish their work, that can be shared with everyone.
Yeah, I believe this year is a little bit different in that there's an allocation amount for Ulster County, the area for the bridge program. The culvert program, though, I believe is region-wide. So,
Region-wide, yep, we have a separate scoring team for the culvert.
mhm.
The culvert program is state funded, not federally funded, so it goes through different, many times people can do easier process. So yeah, we'll share the results of that with everyone too, once they complete, their work. So we can get a lot of culvert applications regionally. So, you know, it's kind of like good news and bad news, right? Because you want to get all the applications and you want to spend the money, but you don't want to have projects that you can't fund. Where are you guys with your off-system bridge funding? Are you fully programmed when you came out of the SIP update?
Yes, we were. weren't we?
Yeah, I think there may have been a small amount of funding,
Okay,
well under $1 million. that was
okay,
remaining.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we switched out one bridge for Rochester to a bridge for Ulster County.
But I would say overall, you know, I'm really pleased with the program, you know, we changed how we're doing it this time, but I feel like every, you know, it's been working well so far. We've been, you know, meeting our target dates, so we'll see how the scoring teams do. Now, who's on, David, are you on the scoring team?
Yes.
We all are.
Oh, you all are.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got stuck on it, right?
you did. I don't know if Dennis made it.
I know Amy's on it, she's actually the scoring team captain. You know, so if you have any questions or anything, you know, she can help answer that, and she's facilitating setting up the meetings, which you should have all in place, right? You have your scoring meetings.
I have something on my calendar.
All
yeah,
right,
I
good.
think so.
Okay. Okay.
how many people are on it?
Ah,
I would say
geez.
each team has like 5 to 6 people. We have town, county, MCO, and state representation. With the state, you have structures, experts on it, and then county staff to help. So they're really well balanced.
Finally get that right.
We'll see.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on the Bridge New York program. The federal fiscal year 2022 tip performance and obligations.
Yeah, I don't have a presentation here, but again, if you go to the UCTC website under annual reports, every year MPOs are required to post a listing of tip performance and obligations. So all the federal aid obligations that have been made in that federal fiscal year need to be listed and accounted for. So that has been published you can find it under annual reports as well. I don't recall what we were finding in terms of obligations for Ulster County last year. I can present it at the next policy committee meeting in greater detail. I already talked about the 2021 annual report. Again, that is addressing our planning program. UCTC LRTP corrective action. During our triennial review, there was a corrective action that the Federal Highway Administration found that our long-range transportation plan, specifically the financial plan, did not fully meet the requirements of the federal regs. So we're required to do an update to that financial plan. I submitted a detailed memo to our partners at FTA and FHWA, Jennifer Terry and Gautam Manny, regarding my proposed methodology for coming into compliance. And we're presently discussing that methodology to make sure that everyone is satisfied with it before we actually execute it. Essentially, it's a estimation of potential future revenue throughout 2045. And then also an estimation of potential future costs of the transportation system to the same time period. It is a very much a prognostication, but it's a useful activity. And I think it's a very useful exercise in terms of communicating the needs of transportation system to our local members. So I look very forward to presenting that to members as soon as we can come to terms with the methodology. And I think I'll have a call with our partners later this week to finalize that.
Brian's developed something called a Stankey chart.
Stankey chart, yeah,
Stankey chart
yeah.
that will confuse anyone. So
It looks like a big plate of spaghetti, but it follows all the funding sources and revenue sources and shows in a linear fashion how those revenue sources will relate to specific expenditures. So it is obviously we deal with a lot of different funding sources here at the Transportation Council. It is a visual method to try to show how those revenue sources will be targeted.
Now, are you working with someone from New York City Albany office on those communications with FHWA?
I haven't included anyone at this time. I'm happy to. Projected revenue, basically the revenue sources from the 2020 update were provided in accordance with yourself and Bob Mannix. And we're just using the 2020 methodology to estimate revenue.
So when we give you those numbers, we work with our Albany office to make sure everyone's on the same page and in agreement. They're not necessarily just from us, you know what I mean? But do we think that maybe we should?
Sure, I'll definitely include someone. I would definitely like their input. It's been, at this point, just trying to figure out what the methodology should be, and we've looked at other MPO processes. So if there's any more detailed figures that we can get in projecting the revenue. But again, we're
confused because, you know, whatever we do for UCTC is exactly what we did for Poughkeepsie, we did for Orange. So anything that you're negotiating or discussing with FHWA may apply to others or may not. So I do think it'd be important to include us.
Sure. And I was going to, as soon as I establish a clear baseline with FHWA in terms of expectations. And again, just to summarize the methodology, I'm just taking what we have already been allocated in 2020 and holding those funding sources flat through the life of the plan. It's not really including any new or additional revenue sources. I think that was the most conservative way for going forward with an exercise like this. I'll definitely share that with NISTOC.
And I think it would be Mike Flynn that we would want to loop in as well. Okay.
anything else on that, Brian?
No, not on the corrective action. Traffic Safety Board. I'd just like to remind everyone that the Traffic Safety Board meets monthly, the first Monday of the month. The next meeting will be February. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but the first Monday of February, I think in 2 weeks from Monday. We've had very full agendas and very detailed discussions regarding traffic safety issues. The final item that I wanted to discuss with was the census, urbanized area boundaries.
Yeah, so the census released the 2020 urbanized area boundaries, which we've been anxiously awaiting. It's you may be aware, the threshold for having an MPO is 50,000 people for an urbanized area. The Kingston, and so the main concern was that the census was changing how they were defining an urbanized area. And specifically concerning for us was how far they would allow a skip to go between urbanized areas. So they reduced that distance that you could skip. So right now we have up, that is the 2020, excuse me, sorry, I meant to lead with the 2010. So this is our 2010 urbanized area. This is the Kingston urbanized area. You see, we go all the way up into Greene County a little bit, cover Saugerties, and then it kind of cut off, and then New Paltz is technically part of the Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, New York, New Jersey urbanized area. But this urbanized area is what brought the UCTC into existence, essentially. This is the second iteration of it. But so we had some concerns with going out towards Woodstock, that the skips that are happening here would get dropped. We had concerns going up 9W towards Saugerties with that area being dropped. And then just the surrounding areas in general and down to Rosendale. So let's take a look at the, sorry. So that's 2010, go back to the 2020. Come on.
Not liking it today, is it?
Apparently not. There we go.
There you go.
So as you can see, we essentially drop out going through Rosendale. We still kept Saugerties, which was the main population concern that we had. And you did lose New Paltz. That was part of the Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, New York, New Jersey urbanized area. But that gets identified as a lost Greene County. One of the things is there's these non-UZA urban clusters, however. So New Paltz does get separated out there. But that whole 299 stretch was something that we kind of had concerns on with the skips and the jumps, and it did get dropped out. So I'm just gonna again toggle.
Is that Ellenville to the left there?
Yeah, those are urban clusters, so it's not technically part of the defining the MPO, but it is still classified as urban. So when the numbers came in, again, 50,000 was the threshold that we had to hit for population. We came in at 50,524. We are the 5th smallest, I believe, in the US. Smallest in New York State. So.
Smallest in New York State and the 5th smallest in the US.
And is that's for a 10-year period?
10 years, yeah, so we're good, we're good for 10 years.
A couple of things happen here. One is it will affect our allocations because we've dropped about 7,000 or 8,000 people by losing some of the areas that we lost. The original population for the MPO was around 57,000. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that it does impact road classifications, as we all know, is that we now have a number of roadways which will not be federally, they'll be federally aid eligibles, but they won't be federal aid eligible urban. So some of the funding sources, large urban, small urban, will drop out for these areas, particularly in the New Paltz area and some of those areas around there where you actually have urbanized traffic to a certain extent, and now you don't have any urbanized area at all associated with it. It doesn't even show up as an urban cluster, which is odd. I don't know.
I will say that as part of this process, though, we do go through and adjust the urbanized area for FHWA purposes. So we try to follow, through the adjustment process, you try to follow kind of logical sections of roadways to make sure that it's kind of matching up with what you would expect. So you don't have one roadway dropping in and out of an urban classification in some areas that we may run into, such as, I would imagine like in here,
And that adjustment process is conducted by the MPO, and so UCTC will probably initiate that. We'll wait for NISDOT's green light and guidance, and we'll probably initiate that. I would expect at the end of this year.
I believe that's kind of what had happened, because in the last go around, we'll present the kind of the smooth components and look for input, and we'll let you guys know as soon as we hear more information on that front. But
So we may have to redo the map in the in the
Yeah, which is-
UPWP.
That would be in next year's UPW.
Okay. Any
Yeah, I mean,
questions about it? I mean, it's an important thing to think about because, you know, had we not made the 50,000 threshold, there was a substantial amount of federal dollars that were on the line and as well as staffing that was on the line, associated with that. So, I mean, the MPO could have gone away, without meeting that 50,000 threshold. And the interesting thing is the methodology did change, to extent that the TMA actually got smaller as well. Portions of in the areas in southern Ulster County got smaller. In addition, Curious Joel is now its own MPO. 70 some thousand people in Curious Joel in Orange County.
I don't know if they've decided on how if
They
they're,
don't know how they're gonna do it, but they're eligible to be their own
Yeah.
MPO. So,
That 50,000 threshold change each
it hasn't.
time, each decade?
It hasn't.
It's remaining 50,000.
It's remaining. There was talk about going to 100,000, but it has remained at 50,000.
You know, if there are any MPOs across the country that have been brought down.
We don't.
I was taking a look through the stats to see those that were right on the border. I didn't see anything on the implications.
Cause what were
Of-
you before this? Were you like, you know, the 10th small, or have you always been the 5th small?
No, we were higher up in the rankings. We dropped. There were,
Watertown is now bigger than we are.
So there must have been then
The-
areas across the state.
there were, and I took a look through their minutes to see if I could find out anything on what was going on. I didn't see anything, pending when these got released, but there's got to be a process, I guess, in there for what happens and what it is. We're not necessarily sure.
I'm glad you didn't have to look, we didn't have to look it up.
Yeah, it was.
Water can get bigger.
It's in the difficulty.
exactly.
This is, and we filed comments on the census, proposed census changes. The difficulty in Ulster County is that you have a lot of urban clusters, but you have unbuildable land between them. So the connections between Saugerties and, well, let's just say between Rosendale and New Paltz, it's all floodplain and agricultural land. It's not buildable. So you have an urban cluster in New Paltz and you have an urban cluster in Rosendale, and then you have an urban cluster in Kingston, and you can't count them all together.
Which is ironic because that's why you need the transportation.
Well, of
Because you have
course.
all these clusters that are spread.
Yeah, smart growth, you know.
And that's, again, the importance of that smoothing that we go, the exercise that we go through is you get in those connections.
But it is quite a change. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but 7,000 or 8,000 people when you're dealing with a population of 50,000 is quite a change. I haven't done the math in my head, but it is quite a change. And in addition, all those communities that we're looking at grew. So we're not actually losing population. The city of Kingston grew, all the areas in and around the city of Kingston actually had population increases in the nothing spectacular, but it wasn't because we lost population in the urbanized areas that we had a problem.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, probably did. Anything else?
Not
Any-
for me.
Any other business? Any public comments? Hearing none.
Next meeting, February 28th.
28th, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Um,
That was just